Welcome you to the program, Brother Trotman.
Thank you, Deon, and good evening, viewers.
Yes, so on the political scene, we talked last week about, the intervention of the IRI
Aye.
and the role that the American ambassador continues to play in the political life of Guyana. And you did mention that it seems as though that she's the driving wheel behind whatever is taking place here, that our government is now like a puppet administration. We also talked about the fact that these attempts at having the IRI entrenched upon us is basically an attempt to uh, continue the process of implanting an administration and maintaining that administration because of its likely favorable nature to the U.S. foreign policy. The main thing is trust, was that, the resources that have been discovered would see that kind of intervention from the United States is something that they've done across the world, where they seek to manipulate, dominate, and dictate in countries that have resources that they want. But in spite of the outcry that we talked about, I noticed that not even the president, but Jack Dio has taken up, he's the other driving force behind the PPP. But he came forward to say that, in spite of what people have said, and the Attorney General did say that too, that they will be pushing ahead with their reforms, and that after they would have, it's in the process of being drafted, and then it will be made public for people to comment and to possibly make interventions for changes. Now, how is that approach standing with you?
Deon, regardless of what Jack Dio and Nandila have said, the mere fact that it was the U.S. ambassador who was the first person to speak to the existence of this program is an indication that this program is driven by the United States, and that it's extremely disturbing to note that what is happening now is that the whole line of authority in Guyana, political authority in this country, has become clearer. It's becoming clearer. I say this because, as far as I can see, the number one person who is the absolute ruler of Guyana today is Madam Sarah Lynch, the U.S. ambassador. And she is supported by the British and Canadian High Commissioners, the European Union ambassador, and the United Nations and the UNDP resident rep in this country. All of them are grouped together, and they are, in control of the society. It is clear, as you said, that now that the big kahuna in Guyana, Jack Dio, has spoken, that he, in spite of the fact that there is a president named Irfan Ali, that he is the number one person in the Guyana political landscape, in the political landscape of the government. He is the number one person. It is clear that Irfan Ali is just a mere appendage, and because his role is to appear to be the mouthpiece of the government. But when, as in this situation, there has been a concerted protest against the IRI's imposition, the United States imposition in the country, both Nandilal and Jack Dio have now seen it fit to impose their thinking on this situation. Here it is they're saying. What is it Jack Deon saying? He gives the impression as if this thing is going to enjoy a democratic process. But in fact, he's saying to us that in spite of what the protests are in relation to this thing, to this project, insofar as what has been imposed on us by the U.S. ambassador, backed by those international observers, international representatives, that they are carrying out, because they now talk in giving what they want to say is the approach to this thing, that whether the opposition or the other forces in society which are against the imposition of this project is going to go forward. And I think that what it means for us in this country is that, as I said, I started off by saying that it is clear who's in control, that we have a government which is just an appendage of the international community, carrying out the biddings of the international community, because as you started off by pointing out, that as long as the government is prepared to enhance the U.S. government's achieving its geopolitical interests, and its geopolitical interest is not only located in Guyana, it is widespread in this part of the world. Guyana is seen as a facilitator of the achieving of that project, and once it is that they are prepared as much as possible, even if it means, and Jack Deon's statement tells me that they are going to aid and abet the trampling of the fundamental rights of Guyanese, and this, they're using this project as a major step in that direction. And as I said last week and the week before, and I will continue to say, that we must understand what we face with in Guyana, and that we must ensure that it doesn't happen. We must ensure that it doesn't happen. We must ensure that the control of the government that the international community has, that by some means we must ensure that it is broken. And we must make sure that the government acts in the best interest of the people. This PPP government is known in the past to object to anything that suits their purpose, and that to support...
No, not that suits their purpose.
No, to object to anything that is against their interest,
Okay.
and to support anything that suits their purpose. And they badly want to hold on to power for as long as possible. And as far as you can see, that the international community sees the PPP government, the People's Progressive Party,
As pliant.
yes, as being compliant with their demands, and that they're prepared to do everything in order to achieve this. For the PPP, it's power at all costs. And in achieving power, that they will be able to rape the resources of the country in the way in which they've been known to in the past. So that we have a serious problem here.
Yeah, but in light of what Jack Deon said, they have obviously determined what they want, and the U.S. government will determine what this document should be like. Is there any credibility in him? Should anybody believe that his touting that it's going to be put in the public domain for amendments and discussion, that would have any effect on the document itself in the final result?
No. The fact of the matter is that the document started out by being a joint effort of the U.S. government and the other international forces and the PPP.
Right.
That is where the document started out. There was widespread discussion between those two sets of elements, the PPP on the one side. Don't worry with it, what you hear they saying that this is the U.S. government attempting to carry out a program. This is a project that has been agreed to in the first instance between the U.S. government and the other international forces and the PPP. And in fact, what has happened is that they see the IRI as being the instrument through which this project is to be carried out. What has happened here is that there has been a collective negative response to the project. And Jagdeo now is attempting to give the impression that, there are going to be widespread consultation. In fact, it's just endorsing the position that all those persons and organizations who have protested against its introduction, all he's doing is endorsing the fact that this thing has already been agreed long before it was, we got notification of it. And that, to answer your question, there is going to be, regardless of what he says, there is going to be, this thing is not going to have the kind of input into its end result that is required to make it something that we could be proud of.
So, but we have advocated for a certain kind of approach. Even the Human Rights Association would have advocated for certain approach to dealing with the changes that were being touted. Our own institutions have been ignored. The traditional approach to dealing with constitutional and other amendments have been bypassed.
Yeah.
So how do you see this development in relation to this idea of democracy and having due process in relation to such change?
It is just something that they're spewing about. It suits their purpose to say that, but in actual fact, it is not going to be that. It is not going to be that. It's not going to be that. You cannot start off with a project where form and content has been agreed to by two sets of people behind the backs of the Guyanese people. You cannot, there is no way in which it is, once you start off in that way, that you can believe that the end result is one which enshrines the democratic process in Guyana. It is not going to be. They started off in that direction. They started off by making it clear that as far as the creators of the program is concerned, the creators of the project is concerned, that they want to see the People's Progressive Party enjoying unrestrained access to the government over time. That is what they want to see, because they believe look, these people aren't foolish. These people have looked at the political players in Guyana, and they have said, look, insofar as our interest is concerned, the one party who will guarantee the achieving of our interests is the People's Progressive Party. That's their thing. And so that the resources, this thing is about controlling at all costs the resources of the country, and so that you need to have a government in place that is compliant. And that is what you have. And so this talk about this thing being a democratic, will enjoy, a democratic process. It's just talk. It's not going to be so. It is not going to be so.
But you have mentioned that we should not allow it. My concern is with, other states like Guyana now, and Haiti and all of these things. From the time of during the Cold War, 1945 all the way up, 1992 and so on, that these nations have been upholding Pinochet and the other dictators within society. And currently in Haiti, for instance, there is a lot of resistance to the administration. But they don't mind, as we have seen in Israel, even by then, has given the Israelis the right to kill and to maim and to destroy people. Your thought of people not accepting it, where can that lead us?
Well, look, I believe it's for me. I don't want to see this happening again, because it seems to be something that is going to eventually take place. Because in trampling on the democratic process, in these established international governments, aiding and abetting the trampling of the democratic process in Guyana. Because let's look at what's happening with the Afro-Guyanese community in the country. This government began its existence in August 2020. That's it.
Mm.
And I have never seen in such a short space of time the amount of blows being directed again to the African Guyanese community in the way in which it's been acting. It's a continuation of a pattern, but certainly when it is that you look at what has happened from the time the government took office to the present time, it is blows non-stop. And they're saying nothing. The international community is saying nothing. It is saying nothing because they want to ensure that any possible opposition to their to what is it they have in mind is beaten down from the inception. Now, I don't believe that the Guyanese people are going to sit down forever and take what is happening to them. I don't believe so, because that has never been the position of the Guyanese masses. There's resistance has started in some places and have built up. We have seen this in the anti-colonial struggle that we've had in Guyana. We've seen this when it is that the slaves took on the establishment in order to ensure that the brutalities that were taking place and that their freedoms that were being trampled on were removed. We've seen that. I do believe that at some point in time, Guyanese will say enough is enough. They'll say that our backs are against the wall and we can go no further. And so they're going to draw a line in the sand and saying this is as far as we can go. I can see that happen. But it is not going to be, it is not going to be, and I don't want to see this happening, but I believe this is what is going to happen. It is not just going to be something that happened immediately with everybody, joining. I think that there are going to be small pockets of resistance until it becomes large and larger and larger, and then the government will understand that people, have to be respected. They have rights, and that you cannot impose conditions which are intended to take away those rights from them. The government is in an arrangement with the U.S. administration and the other international representatives in this society. They're in a collaborated arrangement in which the intention is to take away the fundamental rights from people by introducing what they say is some electoral reforms. Now, if it is that you're concerned about electoral reforms, you cannot be concerned about electoral reforms without being concerned with the wider constitutional reforms. The wider constitutional reforms will embrace the electoral reforms. We have, and I continue to say this, I will continue to say this, we have a situation in this country where the president, wherever he comes from, enjoys a situation where from the time he is appointed to office, any offense that he may have committed against the state, against the people of the country, is wiped clean from his slate. It can't be. Our reforms must embrace the difficulties of that situation and must seek to remedy it. We must have a situation where no official of the government, whether big or small, could have criminal charges that are laid against a person prior to holding office the slate must be wiped clean. No, you must have the same thing that is happening in some Latin American countries and in some of the European countries, where it is a person who holds high office, who is accused of doing something, must have his day in court. And they don't want to have that. So what they do is they selecting electoral reform as the way to go. And I can tell you something that I find extremely worrying. What I find extremely worrying is the continued repeating of people like Jagdeo, of Nandilal, and I'm quite sure that the people who have drafted this plan and given it to them, who have been the main drafters of the plan. This thing about saying that certain people will never ever be in charge of the electoral system again. Now, the thing is, you have persons who have been accused of committed certain offenses, and up to now, those persons are going to court, and the charges which are laid against them, the people who have brought them are not even in a position to proceed with them. But you're saying that in spite of that, as far as you're concerned, those persons must never, ever again be in charge of the electoral process in Guyana. But as I was saying, as I said to you before, Deon, what they want to do is to ensure, because it's happening in the election, it's happening at GECOM already, where it is persons, African Guyanese, who occupy senior positions at GECOM are being targeted. And so that one of the ways in which it is that those people who have come up with this, what they call this great plan for electoral reform, one of the things is to ensure that a certain kind of person does not hold senior position in GECOM, and that too is worrying. So that this thing is a broad thing.
Ethnic attack,
which is directed against, right? Yeah.
But while we're talking about this, the approach that they've been taking in relation to these proposed changes, I'm reflecting on the appointment of the former chairman of GECOM, Justice, what's his name? Patterson. And the PPP's approach to the president's decision to unilaterally appoint Justice Patterson. How can we connect what the PPP is attempting now to that process, which they took all the way to the CCJ?
Well, you remember from the inception, it was felt that they could not have had, it was felt that the president should only have identified a certain person, a person from the numerous list that he had put forward.
Well, I'm looking at the process. You're saying, for one thing, that it should not be unilateral, right? That there should have been consultation. And you have a critical matter like changing our laws to affect the life of the country now. In relation to the very GECOM, and you are using a similar approach that you attack, how does it sit with,
No, but I've already addressed that, Deon, because I've said that the whole intention is to ensure that these electoral reforms are imposed for a certain purpose, are being imposed for a certain purpose. Those changes are intended to ensure that at future elections, it is only one party that will seem to be the winner. But if it is that you have the type of consultation that is required from the inception, you can be sure that what will eventuate is something that is not only of the minds of one set of persons, and so that you will find strong resistance to some of those things. They don't want to have the strong resistance, and that is why they've already drafted. Thing I said, the thing is already drafted.
And brought from the United States.
Yes, and that it will be passed around for consultation. And so the thing is that what will eventuate out of those consultations is what they want to have. What they want to have. They don't want to go to the Constitutional Reform Committee for those wide-ranging discussions to take place. And those wide-ranging discussions will mean that you have to go to the streets and talk to people, and talk to the representatives of people, talk to organizations. They don't want that. And they're trying to give the impression that this program, which the IRI is going to be in charge of, is going to do that. It is not going to do that.
And even if it does it, Trotman, the eventual results will not see the...
But it will not do that. It will not do that. Because what they are going to be content to do is to ensure that you have something in which there's an appearance of consultation, but it will not be. It will not be. You cannot have the kind of broad, wide-ranging consultation on electoral reform when it is that you, from the inception, you keep out of the process one of the stakeholders who represent nearly 50% of the population. How could you have that the kind of result that you expect to have? When it is that they will go forward with, because the IRI have already received their instructions on what is to come out of this process. They already have these instructions, and they are known to carry out those instructions faithfully. They've done it in other countries. You've talked about Haiti. They've done it in in the Middle East, and a number of countries, and all of those places that they've been at, they've done it. What you've ended up with is a trampling of the fundamental rights of people. I mean, Haiti is a classic example, where a man by the name of Aristide was voted into office on at least 2 occasions with the largest popular vote ever seen. And they removed him. And right now, look the crisis that you face with in Haiti, where the U.S. government is supporting a set of people who the people don't want to have there. And if you check, you will see the extent to which it is. The IRI has influence over that process.
Well, what I was trying to contend is that when the shoe's on the other foot, you know, your behavior is one way, but when you're in the driving seat, you want people to accept and you know, you're dictating. So in not consulting with the then leader of the opposition in the appointment of Justice Patterson, it was an offense to the extent that they were willing to take it to the extent of the law. But now you are doing not something that is dissimilar You understand?
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you
yeah.
are seeking to justify it.
Yeah, because for them, the end justifies the means. Yeah, that's their thing. That's the point that they're trying to make. Regardless, that's what they want. There was a period when the PPP ordered the IRI out of the country. Get out.
Yeah.
Because you're doing things that is not of our interest. There's a period when it is that you as president, in a period when it is that this country was in turmoil, and the then UNDP representative was trying to see how best he can broker a solution. Jack Dios said, get rid of him, I don't want him here. He's interfering in this process because it suited his purpose to have the situation continue for as long as, regardless of what they said. It suited his purpose, so come out, get out of the country, the man had to be removed. IRI today
Is his baby.
is his baby. He loves them because they will carry out the kind of instructions that will keep them in office, even if it means trampling on the rights of people in the country.
But you've mentioned that people should not take it. From the way things have been going, there is an obvious psychological warfare taking place against people who may be opposed to these things. The police is now being used as a weapon to intimidate, to drive fear, and to, carry out the dictates of the administration, headed by, of course, Robeson Ben, who is the minister in charge of that agency. Now, people's response, are people that fearful that they're going to allow this to happen? What is the march? What is the line of march in dealing with that?
I believe that from within the ranks of the police force, there should be some kind of resistance to what is happening. You will find now, if you take the persons who have been charged, among the persons who have been charged recently for this, what they call this $10 million scam, two of them are members of the Police Service Commission. Mr. Paul Slow, who's the chairman, and Mr. Clinton Conway. Let's take Mr. Paul Slow, for example. Mr. Slow has over time been at the center of resistance to the political directorate, seeking to get him not to carry out his functions. In Babis, he was commanding Babis, and he intervened with against a PPP supporter who used his weapon to threaten people. He took it away from him. He was told by the then Commissioner of Police to give back the man the weapon and to apologize. Slow said, no. I'm carrying out my functions. And they tried to send him at the Ministry of Home Affairs, I believe, as a permanent secretary in there, and he refused to carry out the thing. He took early retirement. He was asked to do an inquiry into the allegations that persons had hatched a plot to kill President Granger. And in doing that inquiry, he identified a number of the then senior officers as not carrying out their duties in the way in which he should. I think he identified the then acting Commissioner of Police, or Commissioner of Police. He identified the person, because one of the things that the Commissioner of Police was accused of is that even when he was on leave, he attempted to influence the way in which this investigation was being done. He identified the acting commissioner of police as being not hands-on in terms of his thing. He identified the crime chief, the then crime chief, as acting contrary to what he should be doing. The then crime chief was removed. The commissioner of police, who probably could have had his term of office extended, that was brought to a halt. And the person who was acting as commissioner was not confirmed in the position of commissioner. What you see happening here, what you see happening, another senior officer was also not promoted in the new line of senior officers. What you're seeing happening here is a case where it is the establishment is settling scores. That allegation which have been made against those persons about fraud in this $10 million thing, I'm telling you, it will fall by the wayside. But what they've done, what they've been able to do, what they've succeeded in doing, is holding these people up to public ridicule. Now that is the way in which they're going to go. That is the way in which they're going to go, and they're sending a signal to the other persons who are members of the officer corps, senior officer corps in the police service, that your tenure is not secured unless you adhere to the instructions which we give. They've moved to politicize the police force by appointing two persons, PPP operatives, as PR and deputy PR persons in the thing. There's no longer policemen who putting out the PR. It is PPP operatives who hold those positions, who carry out, who are putting out what they feel people should hear. The whole intention is to ensure that the police force is now without the competent leadership. And look at the persons who have now emerged as the leaders of the police force at this juncture. Look at them. Look at them, and you know where we're going. You know where we're going. And so that we have to be concerned. The point that you are making is that unless, the point which I want to make is that unless the police officer corps stands up to the political directorate, what we'll have is a situation where the Guyana police force, the leadership of the Guyana police force, are persons who are all prepared to carry out the dictates of the political directorate of this country rather than to act in conformity with the law. That is what we face with. That is what we face with. And I really believe that there has to be a struggle, has to take place within the Guyana police force. But you see, they know that when they get rid of these people, if you move to get rid of the people, the courts, the way in which the courts have been operating, persons who want to challenge may not feel, that their challenges will be upheld, and so that they're in a difficult place. But you can't stop struggling. You have to, and it has to be, and we, who are not members of the force, who understand what is taking place, got to lend support. We have to lend support to the police persons, those police officers who want to take a stand. We have to lend support to them by being critical, openly critical of what is happening.
But what about we're talking about, the way they've treated the police force, but the onslaught on senior officers in the force itself, apart from Mr. Slow and these other people. Many of the senior officers in the force who should have been moving up in ranks with the possibility of becoming commissioners and assistant commissioners, have also had allegations laid against them. And this seems to be the machinations to simply get rid of a certain section, just as is happening in GECOM.
Yeah.
So that in the line for appointments will be operatives of the PPP. You remember that, well, you know that there is a case right now in court in relation to promotions of people who only came into were brought into the force only a few months before and were promoted to the ranks of sergeant and all these things. Men who really had no training or background, who were, some of them even beyond the age that were allowed, the ages that were allowed for acceptance into the force, but they were brought in by the PPP and were being pushed above others. So it's a major challenge. It is a deliberate attempt at fortifying their position in all of the areas that are really going to give them that leverage to dictate and to maim and disfigure and to brutalize any faction that seeks to challenge their authority in this country. But how, apart from the police force itself, what about the people who are going to be the victims of this approach?
That is why I said, the point that you've made just now, the question that you've asked is very important, because we have in this country something that we must never lose sight of, that we have in this society a situation where it is in excess of over 400 persons were slaughtered. And we call it extrajudicial killings, the work of the phantom, etc. One of the things that is not well known, and we're going back to that period, one of the things that is not well known is during the period of those of the violence in the society, certain persons were going into the police stations, persons who were accused, who've been picked up for certain things. These elements were going into the stations, taking those persons out of the station because they were saying something. I heard policemen say this. They say something like, y'all can't carry out investigations. We can't carry this effing man out to the place because we can find out what's going on. The next thing is, the person disappears. We are going, but that happened during the period of the PPP government. Policemen stood idly by and allowed that to happen because they were afraid of what the consequences are. I think that if it is that people remain silent in this persecution of police officers, because I don't believe that all of these police officers who have been accused are actually guilty of offenses. I don't believe that the persons Slow and Conway, those persons have committed crimes, but they've taken a stand against the excesses that were taking place in the police force. And we're heading back into the situation where the police force, the police officer corps, will comprise in the main a number of persons whose reputation is questionable. And I will not be surprised if it is what we had before is reintroduced in the society once more. People like us who are doing these programs, we are imperiled by the fact that we are rude enough to raise our voices against the excesses that are taking place. But threats are issued. Who could you go to? You can't go to the police because the police themselves are complicit with what is taking place. And I'm telling you that what is happening now in the Guyana Police Force is a dismantling of an officer corps which was supposed to be credible, and to put in place a set of persons who are prepared to carry out the instructions of the political directorate. It is how it is, the whole process of trampling on people's fundamental rights take place. It is not. It won't only happen with the attempt to do the review the electoral process without doing the wide-ranging constitutional thing that is required. They are going to put in place, you've seen it already, they're putting in place a number of persons whose only role is to ensure that the instructions of the political directorate are carried out.
But what about the military itself? We've had instances, I know, for instance, the former chief of staff was actually escorted out by a lower rank. After he retired, he used to go there to exercise and so on. And he was ordered out of the compound by an Indian agent of the PPP who was in the force. Our military, our police seem to be pretty docile when it comes to governments and so on. In other places, it doesn't happen. I know, well, in Myanmar, for instance, right now, what has happened is that the military took a stand and they have basically evicted the incumbent because of the excesses. You know, they were actually killing out a tribe. Emaciating those people and so on. So, why is it, what is the role of these agencies in standing by and watching excesses?
I believe, Deon, that the fear is widespread. The fear is widespread. I believe that people are concerned with their little thing that they have. Most of them are. And so that I believe that the government is aware of that. And the government feels very confident. I mean, they believe that they have, as Prime Minister, a person who they think commands the loyalty of the rank and file of the force. That's why they have him there. They don't have him there because of what he could bring in terms of numbers to the PPP. But they have him there because it is important for them to have their fingers on the pulses in the Guyana Defense Force. And I think that within the force, the GDF, there might be persons who are angry, but who believe that it is best for them at this point to be cautious. I don't think that the situation will remain. I don't think that the situation will remain. And I think that what you may very well find happening is that once it is that they believe that this person or that person is no longer loyal or will no longer be compliant, that they're going to move against.
Go after them.
Yeah. And incidentally, something I wanted to say. What you find happening here, you know, Jack Dio is not eligible for a third term.
But he's vice president.
But he's vice president.
Okay.
The Constitution, though,
doesn't have a provision for any.
Says that the person who's prime minister is the person who succeeds the president if something happens. I won't be surprised because I think that Jack Dio has never accepted the ruling of the court that
he's ineligible.
He's ineligible after a third term. I don't think that he has ever accepted that ruling. And I believe that one of the things that they're attempting, that they're doing, is trying to look at ways and means of how it is that they could
maneuver,
tinker with the Constitution to ensure that he can re-emerge as president. I'm warning.
The Russian model.
Yeah, I'm warning that this is what we're faced with. So they have him there. They have Mark Phillips as Prime Minister. And I don't know if it is that he has ever given thought to the fact that he could be just a figurehead in the same way as how the long-serving Prime Minister was, a figurehead. And I think that he may very well, it is only left to be seen if the present Prime Minister will be as compliant as the long-serving Prime Minister was in relation to ensuring that the wishes of the PPP are achieved. Because you can remember, Ben Jagdeo assumed the presidency. It had to do with a sleight of hand that took place. Sam Hines was the Prime Minister. Mrs. Jackson wanted to step down, but they wanted to ensure that a PPP person, remains in office, even though Sam Hines was attempting to give the impression that he's PPP to the core. He had to step down. Jagdeo was appointed Prime Minister, and then when Janet Jackson stepped down, he succeeded. As in keeping with the Constitution, because he was thinking, he succeeded, and thing was brought back. I do believe that a lot of the thinking of the PPP at this time is to ensure that the Vice President, who really is the number one person after Sarah Lynch in the rulership of the country, that there are ways and means that of them examining the present scenario to see how it is they can maneuver him into the line of succession for the presidency. Because I think that even though they have Irfan Ali as the president, they're not satisfied that he has the competence to think about it is that you could get in the thing and talk about people coming here who came as slaves for betterment in the thing. It gets clear that he's not in touch with realities. He's not in touch with reality. And I thought when I heard him make the statement, it didn't have to do with a slip of the tongue. It had to do with what he really believed. So that I am warning that we may have a situation facing us where this man is sitting down there and planning along with Anil and even the U.S. ambassador on how it is that he can remerge into the position, because they believe, you see, one of the reasons why they want him in the position, is that he's vulnerable. The crimes that he has committed against the people of this country has made him vulnerable. And they believe that they could use his vulnerability to carry out their instructions. And that's why look, in the previous times when we had all of these crimes, when 400 something persons were being slaughtered, people were saying that the U.S. government will move against him. I said, no, they wouldn't. They won't move against him, because even in spite of his excesses, they still believe that he's useful for them. They will only move against him when he's no longer useful. And up to this time, they continue to believe that he's useful. And so that they will do as much as possible to ensure that he could achieve the most senior position in the government, because they believe that he's fearless in carrying out doing what is it he has to do.
I want to raise another issue off the point, but I mean the ordinary people will have to factor into all of this, because at the end of the day, we are the ones who will face the brunt of what transpires. The people of Den Amstel I got a call that the Wales, former workers of the Wales estate, were given some lands to rear cattle. But a coconut developer was given, excuse me, that portion of land that they were allowed to use as pasturage under this PPP administration. First, he took up one portion of the land, said they can use the other part to graze, and then he took everything. Now, the NAMCEL is saying that they're hearing that what they plan to do there is, and NAMCEL is a village bought by ex-slaves.
Ex-slaves, yeah.
The land belongs to the people. There is an undivided section of land there that since the APNU came into power, the people came to the WPA. They asked that we intervene in having the land subdivided and the people be given plots for building houses and so on. The then Chairman Adams resisted. We went to Balkan to have him intervene. He was not even concerned. And so that portion of land sits there. The people are in need of more land for building houses. The village is expanding. And it's there. The current chairman, I understand, is just as docile as Adams was in relation to the people's desire. But now we're hearing that there will be an attempt by this administration to go and to fence that portion of land and to give it to these farmers from the riverbank to come and to use that to graze their cattle. I don't know if the allegation is true, but I want to sound the warning that if that is the idea, that I'm saying to the people of the NAMCEL, that they should not allow it, and that they should fight vigorously to prevent any attempt at having what is theirs taken away from them. I don't understand why it is that these people who, if you're so concerned about them, you talk so much about the shutting down of the estate, the effect on the lives of the people and all of that, and then their means of survival, which was given to them by the previous administration,
It's taken away. It's being taken away.
And then you're going to impose upon another set of people to ensure that their gains are. So I assure the people of the NAMCEL, I told them that I would raise it on the television, but I want them to understand that the buck stops with them.
With them, yes,
You know, they have to resist any attempt, and we don't mind going down there to lend our support, but they have to be the ones. And I'm advocating, you know, that I don't know, because I spoke only the other day to a farmer in them, then I said, man, what is happening with that undivided portion of land? Why is it that the people are not being given it? He said, they never get it. So there is some pessimism in terms of, you know, people.
The final outcome,
the final. For the people of the NAMCEL acquiring that portion of land. But I am hopeful that the chairman, people, I don't understand, you know, it's really mind-boggling. Because what is the land being held for? We have a situation in BV where the entire industrial estate is being given away to people. BV got a portion of land that they're given to Lazo, right? BV is giving away land like madness, right? Lazo took all that land and then he sold it. A gated community is now in BV, right? And BV people can't go in. You understand? So our inheritance, somehow, the people who have come afterwards, who do not understand the sacrifice that would have been made in acquiring these properties, that they're treating with it. Now, a street has been given away, blocked off. The last update I got is that residences are being constructed in the industrial complex that is being put up by the person who has been given a lease. And then I'm still now. Lincoln has taken a stand in Berbice,
Berbice,
right? Which is laudable because in fact, many years ago when I was writing for David Granger, he used to do an Emancipation magazine. I went there, I interviewed the people of the village. They said that Kojomak first owns the land. He was their great-great-grandfather, whatever. But the portion of land where these other elements would have taken up, they had taken over the place and were actually bullying the original proprietors. And when I asked, why is it that you all are not making an effort to have what
resist the thing,
there was obvious fear. But this was under the time during the PPP's reign. There was obvious fear to stand up for what is their own. Right?
And the most recent thing, remember, Lincoln was charged, I think?
No, he wasn't charged.
He wasn't charged. He was accused of...
Well, man was sharpening a cutlass.
Yeah.
And walking around and all of these things. So, then Amstel, we are behind you. If any attempt is going to be made to usurp that property, but you all have to continue to fight to ensure that whoever chairman or whoever is there, that as a people, that land goes to the people of the Nams.
Yeah, but Deon, I want to suggest something. I know that you said that you've committed groundings thesis. By virtue of groundings, you mean the WPA thesis. But it would be useful if it is that 2 or 3 of those persons could come on the program.
Yeah.
And so let's invite them to come on the program, next week's program.
Okay.
So they can speak to the issue, so that the public at large could have a sense. It's not that they're hearing it only from you. They could have a sense from the sufferers, about what really is taking place. It seems to me that this government, I saw them retreat on a position recently with Archer from Stevens Waste.
Yeah.
This fellow from
The Caracare.
And Courtney Ben. On some matters. I think, you see, when it is that you juxtapose their actions against other persons, look at what's happening straight down the West Ranville Road. Look who's taking up all of those lands. Look who's taking up all of those lands. There's one man who's virtually he's just expanding simply because he's a big businessman supporter of the PPP. He can do no wrong.
That point was made, that there are lots of Indians who, under the same conditions, were given lands, by lands and surveys on the Trevor Bend. But no attempt has been made to approach them as they have approached the black people who received those.
There's no offense for African Guyanese in this country to have wealth in some form or the other. If it is land, even though the land might be one that was held by your family for years, it should be taken away. I mean, if you watch it, there's some people, if you call names, they'll want to not only sue you, but sue the studio. And so that you want the one studio who gives us an entree to the people. We don't want to expose it to them. But if it is that you look and see what has been happening in relation to, these lands distribution, it's ridiculous. When Trevor Ben took over, he found the situation here that was terrible, and he brought a lot of order into the thing,
I know.
Trevor Ben brought order by his management attitude to the
PPP doesn't like
I mean,
what kind of order? Anyhow, the lights are on us, Brother Trotman. I want to thank the operator just switch there. Operator, just switch your image, please. Oh boy.
Adrian Dutchin. It's who I am, yeah.